Hello and welcome to my first YouTube video and my first Photoshop tutorial. This is going to be about my methods for not only getting the most detail out of your image, but bringing back life to an image that may have been darker that you want to save. Now usually you want to get the best image you can out of your camera, but sometimes you have one shot to get something and it just didn't quite turn out the way you wanted. So here are some of my ways to really get the most out of your photo, whether it's properly exposed or not. We're starting here in Photoshop CS5 Camera Raw. Now the first thing we're going to do is take a look at the histogram. Generally you don't want anything touching either side. That means you're losing detail, and if there is something, like in this case we have a spike on the left side in the red channel, we can bring that back. The first thing we're going to do is go to our white balance, and in a photo like this that's got a lot of blue tones and it seems a little monotone, we're going to go down and I'm going to choose cloudy. That keeps a lot of the blue tones here, and we have the warmer tones up here. Now you notice that also moved the histogram slightly. Our exposure, you are able to move and bring back a lot of details, but as you can see it starts to sort of blow other things out. So by keeping that at 0 and dialing our blacks back, we move the histogram away from that left side. So even though the image still looks dark, we're not clipping anything, and that's what we're looking for here. Now with the clarity, I like to keep my clarity high because the more detail you can get here in Camera Raw, the less you have to worry about later. So usually around 65 is a good starting point. Brightness and contrast I keep at the default settings. Every now and then I might tweak them, but in this case we'll leave them alone. So let's go ahead and open the image in Photoshop. Now if you have any sort of dust on your lens or sensor, anything that you need to be completely taken out, at this point this is the time to do it. As you go on and start duplicating layers, it becomes more complicated and you really just don't want to deal with that. But in this case everything looks to be doing good, so let's go ahead and move forward. The first thing I'm going to do is duplicate my background layer, and I'm going to do this by pressing Ctrl and J. Now you may have another method, but the hotkeys work really well for me. On the duplicated layer we're going to be using Topaz Adjust 4. So we're going to go to Filter, Topaz Labs, Topaz Adjust 4. Now just a quick way to get to where I'm wanting to go is to click on Spicify here. Usually I'm all about going in there, custom tweaking things, but just for the sake of this video and to keep it quick, Spicify gives you a lot of detail and it'll be a good example of what we can do. There's many other presets to choose from. I usually like to make my own stuff, but Spicify will work. So just after clicking that, you can see the difference between the original here and with the Spicify there. Now don't be turned away by the fact that it looks very overprocessed, that it looks very oversaturated. What we're looking for here is all the detail that we're getting down in the rocks, the definition in the waves, things like that. So that seemed to do the trick. So we're going to go ahead and click OK. We're going to let Topaz Adjust do its thing, and it's going to bring us back to our Photoshop panel. Now once that we're here in the Photoshop panel, you can see the difference it's made. Under layers you have the different ways of blending and your options. What we're going to do is we're going to go to the bottom one and choose luminosity. Now as you can see, all the details are kept, but the saturation of all those colors is taken out. It almost looks black and white, but it's not. But that's actually what we're looking for, just to get those details. What we're going to do is duplicate our Topaz layer with Ctrl J, go back up, and on this layer we're going to change it back to normal, from luminosity to normal. And doing this, we're getting all them oversaturated colors and everything back, but that's okay, that's what we want. Now to reach that happy medium of the detail and color, we're going to drop the opacity on this top layer that we have. Now each photo is going to be a little bit different, so you're going to have to adjust accordingly. This one looks pretty decent, around 50%. So just to kind of step back and take inventory, this is where we started, and with our two Topaz layers, this is where we are now. Now, for me, adding that element of realism is about dropping the vibrance and dropping the saturation slightly. Standing there in person, I know that the colors weren't this saturated. Now, I mean, there are situations where you get very saturated colors even when you're in person. But in this case, we're going to go ahead and go to the adjustments here and open Vibrance. Now, once you open Vibrance, you begin with saturation, since that's a little bit more powerful, and just dial it down slightly. We're at 13 here, and Vibrance we're going to bring back just a little bit too. I'm actually going to try to match those at around 13 or so. So we have negative 13 on both those. So this is before and this is after. Now, I'm not sure how it's going to look on your screen, but on mine there's a pretty big difference. Here's before. You can see all the very saturated blues here and the saturated color up in the reflection of the sunset. And then take that away and you can see the clarity kind of come out, and still keep those tones but be a little bit more realistic. Now, going back down here, we're done with our Vibrance. Make sure you have this top layer selected, and while it's selected, press Control, Alt, Shift, and E. And basically what that does, by pressing Control, Alt, Shift, and E as an elephant, is going to take all those and turn them into one layer. Now, you're not losing anything you've done. It creates a new layer that is basically all your previous layers combined. And now we can work globally on this image. So while on this new layer, we're going to go to Image, Adjustments, Shadows and Highlights. Now, the default is going to look pretty bad. I mean, at least in my opinion, that's way overdone. But it shows you the details are there for you to bring out, and it is possible. So the first thing we're going to do in our shadows box here is talk about amount, tonal width, and radius. Basically what amount does is it's the strength being given to these changes. Tonal width is how many tones are affected on, like, a bigger scale. The less this is, the less is going to be affected by it. So in this case, you want to move it up, and you want to make sure the affected areas that you're looking at are affected by that. You adjust the amount accordingly. And radius is basically a form of sharpening. As you move it around, you'll see the details start to come out. And this is really all personal preference and how defined you want things, and in that certain area, how much detail you want. Down here in highlights, it's the same thing. As you move the amount up, it brings the highlights down. Just like here in shadows, as you bring the amount up, it brightens the shadows instead of darkening them. So with highlights, it's the opposite effect. It's actually going to darken the highlights. So in an image, if I didn't have this block in here, usually your eye goes to the brightest part of the image. And in this case, it's going to be the top right, which isn't really where we want the viewer to look. So we're going to bring up the amount just a little bit, and it keeps them colors, but it's also going to take away from us having a distraction, basically. With the tonal width, I think it's good there at 50, but it's always good to adjust, kind of go back and forth and see what works for you. To me, that's too bright, and that's darkening things I don't want, so just 50 looks good. Same thing with the radius. You want to watch for what it's sharpening. Find that happy medium, and click OK. So once this is done, you can see the difference by turning that layer off. This is where we started, and with the shadows and highlights, this is where we ended up. So you can see a lot of the detail starting to come out in the image, and this is really what you want. Now, this necessarily doesn't have to be the finished image, but to me this is just a good starting point for bringing back those details and really bringing out qualities of your image that you might want. So just to take a look back now, this is what we started with, the original image. This is our topaz layer that we set on luminosity. This is our topaz layer set on normal with dropped opacity. We brought the vibrance down with this, and we brought out shadows and highlights with this. So I hope you enjoyed my video. here is a better look at the image. Now I'm looking to do more of these in the future, so if you would like to click subscribe to see my videos, I would really love to have some new subscribers. Also, if you have any comments, questions, or suggestions, please feel free to comment below and I will try to get back to you. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you soon.